Evan's stomach growled so loudly that he was sure the people around him could hear it. The market on Zereth Prime was alive with strange smells and bright colors. Alien vendors shouted in languages he didn't understand, silver-scaled merchants sold meat that steamed in the cold air, glowing fruits floated in crystal bowls, spinning slowly like tiny suns he hadn't eaten in 2 days. Not since the factory job threw him out after finding out he was human. Humans were rare here, and most aliens didn't trust them. Some even called them troublemakers. But right now, Evan didn't care about trust or rules. He just wanted food. His eyes locked on one of the stalls. The glowing fruit looked soft, sweet, and full of juice. The merchant was busy arguing with a customer. Evan's heart pounded in his ears as he slipped closer. He told himself he would take just one. One was all he needed to survive the day. His hand reached out, fingers brushing the smooth surface. It was warm, almost like it had its own heartbeat. He grabbed it, ready to turn and run, but before his legs could move, a hand caught his wrist. The grip was firm, strong, but not painful. Evan froze and looked up. Standing in front of him was a girl. Not human. Her skin was a pale shade of gold, and her hair shimmered like silver under the market lights. Her eyes, large and bright, were the color of polished steel. She wore a cloak with a noble family crest stitched on the shoulder. He didn't know much about alien symbols, but he knew this meant she was important. "What do you think you're doing?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but there was something sharp in it. People around them were starting to look. If the guards came, Evan knew what would happen. Humans didn't get second chances here. "I'm just looking," he lied, her eyes narrowed. "You were stealing," she said, "and badly." Evan tried to pull his hand away, but her grip tightened. She didn't call the guards, though. She just stared at him like she was trying to read his mind. "Why?" she finally asked. Evan didn't answer. He didn't want her pity. She didn't need to know that he slept in an abandoned cargo crate, or that the only thing he owned was the jacket on his back. But her gaze didn't move. It was like she could see straight through his skin. "You're human," she said quietly. "You don't belong here." He almost laughed. "Yeah. Thanks for the reminder," he muttered. Something flickered in her expression. It wasn't anger, it was something else. Maybe curiosity, maybe confusion. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the alley. Evan's heart sank. 2 armored guards were pushing through the crowd, scanning the market. The merchant had seen them and was pointing in their direction. Any second now, they would see him. "Let me go," Evan hissed. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped forward, pulling him with her, to his surprise. She led him behind the stall, past the storage crates, and through a narrow door into a small storeroom. The air smelled of dust and old spices. She closed the door, leaning against it, listening to the guards' voices outside. "They're looking for you," she said. Evan kept his back against the wall. "Why help me?" he asked. Her silver eyes met his. "Because I want to know why a human boy would risk his life for a piece of fruit." He didn't answer right away. Part of him wanted to lie again, but he was tired. Tired of pretending he was fine. "I was hungry," he said simply. Her expression softened just for a moment, but then it was gone. "You should leave this district," she told him. "My family's name can keep the guards away this time." "But not forever," he nodded, turning toward the door before he left. He held out the glowing fruit to her. She frowned. "Take it," she said. "You need it more than I do." But he pressed it into her hand anyway. "Call it paying you back," he said. For a second, their fingers touched. Neither of them moved. The air felt heavier somehow. Then Evan slipped out into the alley, blending into the crowd before the guards could see him. Leoraby, 'cause that was her name, stood in the storeroom, staring at the fruit. She didn't know why she had helped him. But as she held the warm glow in her palm, she had a strange feeling. That wasn't the last time she would see the human boy who dared to steal from her. Evan didn't return to the market for days. The memory of those silver eyes and the way she had pulled him to safety kept replaying in his mind. He told himself. It didn't matter that she was just another alien who would forget about him in a day. But deep down, something about her had stuck. He didn't know why, and he didn't want to know. The days were colder now, and the wind cut through the narrow alleys like a knife. Evan found work repairing small machines for traders who didn't ask too many questions. It paid enough for scraps of food, never enough for comfort. Still, it kept him alive, and staying alive was the only goal. It was a week later when he saw her again. He was fixing a broken drone in the shadow of a cargo bay when the soft sound of boots stopped beside him. He looked up, and there she was, the girl from the market. Her cloak gone, but the crest still embroidered on her uniform. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She was holding something behind her back. "You fixed that with the wrong part," she said, her tone more curious than accusing. Evan wiped his hands on his jacket. "It works, doesn't it?" He replied. She tilted her head, studying him. Then she pulled her hand forward, revealing the glowing fruit he had given her days ago. It was smaller now, shriveled at the edges, but still warm with that strange inner light. "I kept it," she said simply. Evan frowned, not sure what to say. "I thought you'd have eaten it by now," he muttered. "I didn't," she answered. "I wanted to remember you." The words caught him off guard. No one remembered him. People forgot his face the moment he walked away. But she had remembered, and that made something shift in his chest. She crouched down to his level, her eyes sharp. "You didn't tell me the whole truth," she said. "You're not just hungry, you're hiding from someone." Evan hesitated, his gaze dropping. "I'm hiding from everyone," he said. "Makes life easier," she smiled faintly, though it wasn't a happy smile. "My name is Leora," she said. "If we meet again after today, I won't help you." Her words were a warning, but her voice didn't sound convinced. She placed the fruit on the edge of the workbench and stood. "You should leave this district," she said again. "Next time. I might not be the one who finds you." Evan nodded slowly. He watched her turn to go, the cold air catching the ends of her silver hair. Something in him didn't want her to walk away, but he said nothing. She didn't look back, and soon she was gone, swallowed by the noise of the cargo bay. That night he lay awake in his crate, home, staring at the ceiling. He could still see her eyes in the dark, and it made him restless. The fruit she had left sat beside him, glowing softly like a tiny lantern. He didn't know why, but he couldn't bring himself to throw it away. The next day, trouble found him again. 2 men with scaled skin and black armor stepped into his alley, their voices low and dangerous. They worked for a debt collector. And Evan had crossed the wrong person last season before he could run. One of them grabbed him by the jacket. "You owe," the man hissed, "and today you pay." Evan shoved back, twisting free. But the other man was faster, punching him hard in the side. He hit the wall, coughing. The sound of boots echoed, fast and sharp. Leora appeared at the mouth of the alley, her hand resting on the weapon at her hip. The 2 men froze, recognizing her uniform. "This isn't your business, officer," one of them growled. She stepped forward, her silver eyes like cold steel. "It is now," she said. Something in her tone made them back away, muttering under their breath as they left. Evan wiped the blood from his lip. "You're following me," he accused. "I told you to leave this district." She replied, "You didn't listen?" He gave a bitter laugh. "Where am I supposed to go?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then she pulled a small pouch from her belt and tossed it to him. It clinked with the sound of coins. "Consider it payment," she said, "for the fruit you gave back to me." Evan stared at the pouch. In his hands, "You don't owe me anything," he said. "Maybe I do," she replied. her voice soft now. He looked up, but she had already turned away, disappearing into the shadows again. The cold air filled the space she left. Evan clenched. The pouch in his hand, he didn't know if this was the last time he'd see her, but a strange feeling told him it wasn't. 3 years had passed since the last time Evan saw Leora. The small boy who had once stolen fruit to survive was gone, replaced by a man who knew how to move in the shadows. He had built a reputation in the underworld of Zareth Prime, not as a thug or a killer, but as someone who could get things others couldn't. If a ship needed repairs without questions, if rare tech needed moving past the checkpoints, Evan was the one they called. It wasn't a noble life, but it kept him alive, and alive was good enough. Or so he told himself, because every now and then, when he was alone in his cramped workshop, Kay would think about a silver-eyed alien girl who had once stopped him in the market. Sometimes he wondered if she had forgotten him. Sometimes he hoped she had. The day their paths crossed again began like any other. Evan was in Dock 9, checking over a shipment of illegal engine cores. They were dangerous, unstable, and worth a fortune to the right buyers. The job was simple: deliver them to a client. In the lower district, get paid, disappear. But before he could load the last crate, the air was split by a sharp command: drop the tools and step away from the shipment. The voice was calm, but it carried authority. Evan turned slowly, already calculating his escape routes. And then he froze. She was standing there in a dark blue uniform with silver armor plates, the same silver hair, the same steel-colored eyes. Only now, she wore the markings of an officer in the Zeroth Defense Corps. Leora. For a moment, the dock seemed to fade away. Neither of them spoke. Her gaze traveled over him, taking in the older face, the sharper jaw, the scar on his cheek. "You've been busy," she said finally. "You've been watching?" he asked, trying to sound casual, though his pulse quickened. Her lips twitched like she was almost smiling, but didn't. "You're under arrest," she said, her tone flat. Evan laughed under his breath. "Figures," he muttered. "We meet again, and the first thing you do is point a badge at me. Badge or no badge, this shipment is illegal." She replied. Her hand hovered near her sidearm, but she didn't draw it. She was giving him a chance. Though she didn't say it out loud, "You could call the guards and be done with me," he said, stepping closer, "but you haven't." Her eyes narrowed. "Maybe I want to hear your excuse first," she said. Evan shrugged. "Someone's selling these cores to pirates," he said. "I'm trying to stop them from getting into the wrong hands." She gave a short, dry laugh. "That's the best lie you've got." "It's not a lie," he said, his voice suddenly serious. "I know who's moving them. I know where their main stockpile is. Give me time. I can take it down from the inside." Leora studied him for a long moment, the man standing before her wasn't the hungry boy she'd once helped. He was dangerous now, but also different. His eyes held something real, something she couldn't ignore. "Do you have proof?" she asked. "Not yet," he admitted. "Then I should take you in," she said. But her voice lacked conviction. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You have one chance. Evan, if you're lying, I'll be the one to drag you." "To a cell myself?" He smirked faintly. "Guess it's good I'm telling the truth then." She shook her head, half in disbelief. "I don't know why I'm doing this," she muttered. "Because deep down, you still don't think I'm the enemy," he said quietly. She glanced over her shoulder, making sure the other officers hadn't arrived yet. Then she turned back to him. "Get rid of these cores before I change my mind," she said. "I'll find you tomorrow, and you'd better have something worth my time." As she started to walk away, Evan called after her. "Leora." She stopped, not turning around. "3 years," he said, his voice softer now. "You still remembered me?" She didn't answer. but the way her shoulders stiffened told him everything he needed to know when she disappeared. Into the shadows of the dock, Evan let out a slow breath. This wasn't just about the shipment anymore. The moment he saw her again, the rules had changed. And he wasn't sure if that was going to save him or destroy him. The rain on Zereth Prime never really stopped. It fell in thin silver sheets that made the neon lights blur into colors that didn't exist anywhere else. Evan stood under the half-broken awning of an old tea stall, waiting. He didn't know if Leora would actually come. Maybe she'd thought better of it. Maybe she'd already reported him. But she came. Her cloak was soaked, her silver hair darkened by the rain. She didn't waste time with greetings. "You said you could find the main stockpile," she said, her voice low. "Where?" Evan slid a small chip across the table between them. She picked it up and glanced at the data flickering on the screen. Coordinates, shipment lists, names. Her eyes narrowed. "You've been in deep," she said. "Deeper than I like." He replied, "But this is the only way to take them out without losing half the district in the crossfire." Leora leaned back, studying him. "You realize if this is a trap?" "I'll shoot you myself," she said. Evan smiled faintly. "I figured," he said. "And yet, here I am." That made her pause. She wasn't used to people talking to her like that, without fear, without trying to impress her. They moved fast. By nightfall, they were on a stolen cargo skiff heading toward the outer loading docks. The city below was a sea of lights and shadows. The docks were quiet except for the low hum of generators. Inside one of the warehouses was the stockpiled dozens of crates filled with unstable weapon cores. The kind that could wipe out entire city blocks if one went off. Evan crouched beside her behind a stack of containers. "You take the east side." "I'll take the west," he whispered. "Stay in comms." She ordered. Her tone was sharp, but he could hear the edge of concern under it. They split up. Moving like shadows through the maze of metal and rust, Evan worked fast, planting small signal tags on the crates so Leora's team could track them later, but halfway through, the sound of heavy boots made him freeze. 3 guards in black armor were patrolling the area. He ducked behind a crate. Waiting, one of them stopped, scanning the shadows with a narrow beam of light. The beam slid over his shoulder. Any second, they'd see him. Then the light cut away. From the corner of his eye, Evan saw Leora drop silently behind the guard, knocking him out with a single strike. The other 2 spun around, but she was already moving, a blur of precision. Within seconds, they were down, breathing but unconscious. Evan stepped out, shaking his head. "You move quiet for someone who wears metal armor," he said. "Quiet enough to save your skin," she replied, her eyes glinting. They finished tagging the crates. But just as they were about to leave, a door slammed open. Voices shouted in the alien tongue. More guards rushing in. "Go!" Leora shouted, drawing her sidearm and firing in controlled bursts. Evan sprinted toward the skiff, dodging between stacks of containers. He heard her footsteps behind him, faster than the guards. They jumped aboard just as the engines roared to life. Blaster shots hissed past them, scorching the metal. When they were finally clear of the docks, Evan leaned against the railing, catching his breath. Leora stood at the controls, her expression unreadable. "You could have run when they came," he said. "I could have," she replied. "But then I'd be leaving you to die, and I don't like owing debts." He smirked. "I think you just like the challenge." She didn't answer, but her eyes stayed on him for a heartbeat longer than necessary. The skiff drifted into a dark service tunnel beneath the city. They sat in the quiet hum of the engine, the rain above a faint whisper. "You know, this doesn't change anything," she said at last. "You're still on the wrong side of the law. And you're still too good to be playing by their rules." He replied, her jaw tightened. "I'm not playing," she said. "Neither am I," he answered softly. Something in the way he said it made her glance away. The tension between them was no longer just about the job. It was something neither of them wanted to name yet, but both of them felt it. When they docked in the hidden bay where Evan kept his workshop, Leora lingered by the exit ramp. "Tomorrow," she said. "We hit their command center." Evan raised an eyebrow. "Together?" She gave the smallest nod. "Until this is over," she said. Then she stepped into the rain and was gone, leaving him with the echo of her words and the strange, undeniable truth that this alliance was only going to get more dangerous. The night was darker than usual. Even the neon lights of Zeroth Prime seemed muted, as if the city itself knew something dangerous was about to happen. Evan checked the charge on his weapon for the third time. Leora stood beside him, scanning the entrance to the old communications tower that now served as the smugglers' command center. "This is it," she said quietly. "Once we take this place, the operation ends." Evan gave a small nod. He'd been in worse situations, but never with someone who made him think about things other than survival. They slipped inside through a service door. The air thick with the smell of dust and machine oil. Shadows moved in the distance, muffled voices echoing off the walls. Evan's instincts screamed that something wasn't right. They reached the central control room faster than expected. Too fast. Leora froze, her hand hovering near her weapon. "Something's off," she whispered. Evan didn't have time to answer before the lights flared bright and metal doors slammed shut around them. Figures stepped out from the shadows heavily. Armed guards, at least a dozen, and behind them, a tall alien with pale blue skin and a long scar down his jaw. "Welcome," the alien said with a cold smile. "We've been expecting you." It was a trap. Evan's mind raced. They'd been set up. He glanced at Leora. Her eyes were calm, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. She stepped forward, her voice steady. "Let us walk away, and maybe you'll live to see another sunrise." The alien laughed. "You think you're in control?" Blaster fire erupted without warning. Evan dove behind a console, pulling Leora down with him. Just as the first shots tore through the air, sparks rained from the walls, the sound of metal and plasma deafening. They returned fire, but there were too many. A blast hit the console beside Evan, sending a shower of hot fragments across his arm. He bit back a curse. Leora saw the burn instantly, her eyes flashing with anger. Without thinking, she moved in front of him, her body shielding his. "What are you doing?" He shouted over the noise. "Keeping you alive," she snapped. Firing at the nearest guard with deadly precision, he didn't have time to argue. She moved like a storm fast, relentless, controlled a reshot finding its target. But the enemies kept coming, pushing them toward the far wall. If they stayed pinned, they'd be cut down in seconds. Evan spotted a narrow maintenance hatch behind a stack of crates. "Cover me," he called. Leora didn't hesitate, laying down a wall of fire as he sprinted toward the hatch. He wrenched it open, shouting for her to follow, but before she could move, one of the guards fired a stun bolt that caught her in the side. She stumbled, dropping to one knee, her weapon clattering to the floor. Evan's chest tightened. He didn't think, he just moved. Diving back into the open, he grabbed her under the arm, pulling her toward the hatch. Shots tore past them, one grazing his shoulder. But he didn't stop. The only thing that mattered was getting her out. They fell through the hatch together, sliding down a narrow chute into the dark. They landed hard in a maintenance tunnel. Evan's ears rang from the fight above. But he was already checking her for injuries. The stun bolt had left a burn along her side, her breathing sharp and uneven. "You're an idiot," she muttered weakly. "Yeah," he said. "But you're still here." For a long moment, they just sat there in the dim light. Her silver eyes locked on his, and for the first time, there was no shield between them, no uniform, no outlaw reputation, just two people who had nearly died for each other. "You didn't have to come back for me," she said quietly. I did, he replied. You're not the only one who hates owing debts. Something in her gaze softened. She reached up, her fingers brushing the edge of his jaw. For a second, he thought she might say something else, something dangerous, but she pulled her hand back, pushing herself unsteadily to her feet. We're not done, she said, her voice regaining its edge. They'll be coming for us. Evan stood beside her, the pain in his arm and shoulder forgotten. He knew the fight wasn't over. But somewhere in the chaos of that trap, something had changed. They weren't just allies anymore. Whether they admitted it or not, they were something more. The maintenance tunnel was cold and damp. Every drop of water that fell from the rusted pipes echoed like a ticking clock. Evan and Leora moved quickly, their footsteps splashing in shallow puddles. Somewhere above them, the smugglers were regrouping. They didn't have much time. Leora kept one hand pressed against her side where the stun bolt had burned her. Evan noticed the way she winced, but said nothing. If she wanted to pretend she was fine, he wasn't going to call her out on it. He just stayed close, ready to catch her if she stumbled. They emerged into a lower district service bay. The place was quiet, too quiet. A few abandoned skiffs sat under flickering lights. Evan scanned the shadows. They know where we are, he said. They'll be waiting at the exits, Leora walked to a console and began typing, her fingers moving fast. I can trigger the emergency flood protocol. It'll cut power to the upper floors and seal the lifts, she said, buys us a way up without running into 20 guns. Evan raised an eyebrow and floods this entire level. She gave him a look. Do you see anyone down here worth saving besides us? Before he could answer, the door to the bay slammed open. Half a dozen smugglers poured in, weapons ready. Evan shoved Leora behind a skiff and returned fire. The air filled with the sharp hiss of plasma bolts. Metal sparked and burned as shots slammed into the walls were pinned. Evan called over the noise. I'm almost done, she shouted back. A blast hit the side of the skiff, making it shudder. Evan fired again, dropping one of the attackers, but they were closing in. Then the lights flickered. A deep rumble shook the floor. Water began pouring in from the side vents. Cold and fast, Leora grabbed his arm. Move. They ran through a side corridor, the water chasing at their heels. The smugglers shouted behind them, their voices fading under the roar of the flood. They climbed a narrow stairwell, the metal slick under their boots by the time they reached the top. Both of them were soaked and breathing hard. The door at the top opened into an observation platform overlooking the docks. Below them, the smugglers' main ship was loading crates. The rest of the weapon cores, if that ship got away, everything they'd done would mean nothing. Evan glanced at Leora. Her hair clung to her face, her uniform heavy with water. You're thinking what I'm thinking? He said. She nodded. We take the ship. It was insane to people against a full crew, but they didn't hesitate. Moving together, they descended the maintenance ladder to the dock level. The crew was distracted, shouting orders and checking the crates. They didn't see Evan and Leora until it was too late. The fight was fast and brutal. Evan moved with precision, every shot and strike efficient. Leora fought like a blade, sharp, clean, and unstoppable. When the last crew member fell, they turned to the control console. Evan began sealing the loading doors, while Leora set the ship's systems to lock down. Then, a voice echoed through the dock. The scarred alien leader stepped out from behind a stack of crates, a weapon in his hand. End of the line, he said. His aim was fixed on Leora. Evan didn't think. He moved between them, the shot slamming into his chest plate. The impact threw him back, his breath knocked out of him. Leora's eyes went wide. She fired without hesitation, the leader falling before he could take another shot. Then she was kneeling beside Evan, her hands gripping his jacket. You're hit, she said, her voice tight. He shook his head. trying to catch his breath. Chest plate, he managed. Not fatal. Her hands stayed on him longer than they needed to. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. You could have died. Yeah, he said with a faint smile. But then you'd owe me forever. She let out a shaky laugh, but there was something in her eyes he hadn't seen before, something unguarded. They finished sealing the ship and called in Leora's trusted contacts to secure the cores. As they stood on the platform watching the smuggler's ship get hauled away under heavy guard, Evan leaned against the railing. So, he said, does this mean I'm finally on the right side of the law? She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Not yet, she said, but maybe. Close. And for the first time, he wondered if the mission was still the most important thing, or if it was her. The city was quiet for once. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets washed clean. Lights reflected off the wet stone, painting the night in silver and gold. Evan leaned against the railing of an old bridge, watching the slow river below. It had been 3 days since they took down the smuggler operation, 3 days since the last shot was fired, and still he couldn't get her face out of his head. He heard her footsteps before she spoke. You should be resting, Leora said as she walked up beside him. Her uniform was gone, replaced by a simple dark coat without the armor. Without the crest, she looked less like an officer and more like someone real. I don't rest well, he admitted. She smiled faintly. Leaning on the railing beside him, the quiet stretched between them. Comfortable but heavy. They offered me my rank back, she said after a moment. Full honors. Special commendation. Evan glanced at her, and I turned it down, she replied, her voice steady. He raised an eyebrow. That's a big decision. It's the right one, she said. I'm tired of playing by rules that protect the wrong people. He studied her face. You're saying you're ready to break the rules with me? He said with a small grin. Maybe, she replied, her eyes glinting in the moonlight. Depends if you're ready to stop running. Evan looked back at the water, the reflection of the lights breaking with every ripple. I've been running my whole life, he said quietly. But maybe I've finally got a reason to stop. She reached into her coat and pulled out something small. When she placed it in his hand, he recognized it instantly, the glowing fruit. Dried and cracked with age, still faintly warm. You kept it, he said. I told you I wanted to remember. You. She replied softly. He turned it over in his hand, memories flooding back the market. Her grip on his wrist, the look in her eyes. He smiled. Guess I owe you something too. From his pocket, he pulled a small band made from polished scrap metal. A single shard of crystal set in the center. Her silver eyes widened. You made this? From the fruit's core, he said. It's the only thing I've ever stolen that I don't regret. She took it, holding it like it was worth more than anything in the galaxy. You're impossible, she murmured. But her voice was warm. Evan stepped closer. Leora, he said quietly, I'm not asking for forever. I'm just asking for a chance. She looked up at him, the lights catching in her eyes. You already had it, she said, and then, without hesitation, she kissed him. It wasn't soft or uncertain. It was the kind of kiss that carried years of unspoken words, of near misses and close calls, of trust built in fire and danger. When they finally pulled apart, she stayed close, her forehead resting against his. So what now? He asked. Now, she said, we see where this goes. Together, he chuckled. Sounds like trouble. It will be, she agreed. But we're good at trouble. They stood there a while longer. The city lights flickering in the distance, neither noticed the shadow watching from the far side of the bridge. A small device clicked softly as it recorded their images. Somewhere, far from Zerus Prime, a new set of eyes had taken interest in them both. Whatever peace they had found was not going to last forever. But for tonight, the danger could wait. Tonight. They were just Evan and Leora, the boy who once tried to steal from her, and the girl who should have turned him in, bound now not by debt or duty, but by choice. And neither of them planned on letting go.